Hey, it's our second show of Welcome to Broadcasting. I'm your co-host, Gary Wolter.
I'm the other co-host, Curtis Dean.
And as you can see, I'm really, fighting the winter here in Arizona lately. It's
suffering. I was
today
thinking about that this morning, Gary. We almost need to do a regular segment of our podcast, which is called "How's the Weather Out There?" In which case, you'll always say it's great, and I'll always say it sucks, and there's another winter storm coming.
That's the way to piss everybody off in the Midwest.
Yeah, I know. But
hey, you'll laugh at us in a few weeks. In fact, it's going to be crazy hot next week, way too hot for March here. So, it's whatever you like. I know a lot of my relatives like the cool weather, but I digress. Let's talk about Curtis Dean. Last time it was all about Gary Wolter, and this time it's going to be about Curtis Dean. And then, of course, if you've just joined us for the first time, we're highlighting what broadcasting kind of used to be, meaning mainly radio. Curtis and I were in radio for several years. Yep. And I know Curtis, just by putting the links on some of our, other social medias and getting some response, a lot of old broadcasters like ourselves are enjoying that. So that's fun to do too. Or have you guys listen. And I'm sure you guys got stories too. So I've had some suggestions from others. And
I love it.
Yeah.
After our first episode, we had one that we're going to use for a future episode. I won't tease it too bad.
Okay. I don't remember who that would be, but I'm sure there's lots of things. But let's talk about Curtis so you get to know him a little bit better. Again, just to rewind for 1 second, Curtis and I met in the early 90s, late 80s at KKRQ Radio, and we've been friends ever since. And we decided to do this podcast to kind of bring back a portion of our society that still exists, but not quite in the same way. In fact, we did, by the way, had a couple of responses from people who are now still in radio, who are proud of it and should be proud of it.
Absolutely.
And it's still a great medium. A lot of people still listen to the radio, so we're not here to bash the medium by any means. We're here to promote it and hopefully give it our thumbs up and how to make it a little bit better. But again, it's always fun to reminisce. It always is. I don't care what business you're in or technology has changed so fast. If you think about it, more than any other generation, I would argue, in the last 50 years. So this is fun to talk about what it used to be like. But Curtis Dean was from a small town. What small town were you from again?
Wheatland,
Iowa.
And you got 700 and something or other.
And tell us about the story, how you kind of got put on the spot as far as your public speaking ability. How did it all start?
Well, actually, I my first time doing anything in public speaking was in 6th grade, not in Wheatland, but in Grand Mound, Iowa. I got picked for some odd reason to be the MC of the school's bicentennial program, where all the grades each did a different skit about the founding of our nation. And I was just coming out of 5th grade at that time, and they picked me to be the MC. And I remember very little about it other than being very nervous and dropping the microphone once or twice. Then later it was in high school at Wheatland. We were trying to raise money for our prom, and we decided to throw a school dance. And so it was like, everybody bring in your records, and band director supplies speakers. And we kind of, 2 or 3 of us handed off the microphone and did the MC work. And that was the first time I got to be a DJ, so to speak.
So then you went to college right after high school?
Went to University of Iowa and stumbled into college radio there, KRUI. College radio was huge in the early 80s. And
what did you go to college for? What did you think you wanted to be when you went to college?
I wanted to be an astronomer, Gary. Of course I did. I wanted to study the stars. But the stars need you to know math well, and I didn't know math so good. So
and physics and all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And an old grade school friend of mine was working at the college station, a guy who later went on to work at KKRQ by the name of Joe Nugent. And Joe said, "Hey, you bored?" I go, "Yeah, I'm really bored and I'm lonely. I'm sad and I'm getting crappy grades and I'm homesick." And he's like, "Well, come over one night. I'm doing I'm DJing on a radio station, the college station." And I went over there and walked into the studio and fell in love with it immediately and started doing radio stuff right away. So that was like January of 1984.
But so when you were in high school, when you listened to the radio, were you a fan of radio? Did you ever imagine like, wow, that kind of would be fun, or wasn't even on the radar?
I loved listening to KSTT, which was an AM rock station out of the Quad Cities, Davenport. Spike O'Dell was the morning guy there. I loved listening to WLS out of Chicago because it's such a big signal. You could get it in Eastern Iowa. I loved listening to WNT in Cedar Rapids and KIIK in Davenport. Yeah, well, I was constantly had the radio on when I was growing up, and then into high school, and then cassettes kind of took over my life, and I quit listening to the radio for a while and always had cassettes in the deck.
Well, I was always kind of a copier. I wasn't confident enough to develop my own personality, so I just copied other people's or style, maybe not their personality. But did you do a little bit of that? Like, did you listen and go, well, I'll just kind of emulate what I'm hearing?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I just wanted to. I didn't want to be. I wanted to be as natural as I could on the radio, and so who I emulated were the people that I got to know listening that felt like they were the same person behind the mic as they were off camera, off mic. So that's where some of the DJs that I listened to at that time, they just seemed like normal people and they talked like normal people. And I didn't want to be one of those guys that gets on the microphone and talks like this. Hey, everybody, let's go.
Which we call puking in the business when you're talking like an announcer. But you were also interested, or were a thespian. You were in the plays, and you were an actor, right?
Yep. Did some acting.
Something I never did. I kind of wish I kind of regret not doing that.
Oh, that was, you know what? I tell you, that was one of the best confidence boosters for a young person. I always encouraged my kids when they were growing up to be involved in theater and, fine arts like that. There's no greater way to learn how to work through constant fear than having to remember lines while on stage in front of 300 people. I did that again later in life at a community college in Spencer, Iowa, and I miss it dearly, but I don't know how I ever found the time to do it.
That's interesting. So now you're like a junior, senior in college, and then did you go and apply at a real radio station at some point in time?
I did. While I was at KRUI, I kind of moved up the ladder there a little bit, and in 1985, I was asked to be the program director for a whopping $200 or $250 per semester stipend, just like you had it.
That was the going rate. Yeah,
it was the going rate, and you felt like you're on top of the world, man. You're going to buy every cassette. That's going to pay for your Columbia house right there. And so I was doing it at KRUI, and again, Joe Nugent, he had by then was working at KKRQ part-time, and he said,
not Ted Nugent's brother, by the way, but
not Ted Nugent's
cool guy.
They have very little in common with each other. But he said, you ought to come out. There might be a part-time opening. So I went out and I talked to, I can't even remember who the manager was at the time. It was before the manager that we had, who shall remain nameless, but they said, well, we don't have anything right now on the air. I have my air check tape and everything, and I'd had enough, air shifts under my belt. I felt confident about it, but we do have a job for you if you're looking for a part-time job. And I'm like, oh yeah, anything to break in here. Well, what's the job? You're going to dress up as an alligator. So my first paying job in radio was as the K101 tailgater. K101 was KKRQ's format at the time, their positioning statement.
Was it hot? I mean, you had to be hotter and smoking hot.
It wasn't at all. And let me tell you, I think I'd probably been the third or fourth person to wear this gator costume since they were using it. And it reeked of every person who'd ever been in that thing. And it was basically, I remember the head was built around a football helmet. Well, I never played football. So I remember the first time I went to put the dang thing on, I just about ripped my ears off because I didn't quite get it positioned correctly with the ear guards. But I was the tailgater. I went to different mall openings, store where the radio station was doing a remote broadcast.
What's funny about that, Curtis, is your first job in radio was not to talk.
Exactly. In fact, I was told not to communicate with people.
Yeah, mascots don't talk.
But the great thing about it, Gary, was I could be a complete dork and no one knew who it was.
There you go.
One of my first experiences doing that is I was doing a store opening at the old Capitol Mall in Iowa City, and I can't remember who the talent was there, one of the DJs, and I got to put the helmet on and backstage so nobody could see who it was, and come out as the tailgater, and I'm out there, goofing around, swinging my tail at people, and around the corner comes somebody, and I do a double take. It's my high school guidance counselor, the man who told me I could be anything, do anything, and go anywhere. in this world.
Look at me. I've made it to the big time. I'm a mascot in Iowa City, Iowa.
I broke character and I said, "Hey, Mr. Mustard, it's me." He's like, "Who's who?" Curtis Dean. "You're an alligator now."
You made it.
Lord. But you know what? It eventually got me a job part-time. And there for a few years, I worked part-time on KKRQ, the FM station that Gary, you worked at your time there. I worked on KXIC, the AM station, kind of the black sheep of the family, DJing on KKRQ and reading news and doing kind of just general announcing stuff on the AM. Somewhere in there, I did a stint in radio sales for like 6 months. And at one point I even had a job. I had a job at a different radio station. So I was actually one weekend, I was on 3 different channels, different stations the same day.
So what was the deal with how did you feel when they changed the format? Because it was K101, hit radio, and then all of a sudden we're going to go to play some 60s and 70s and call it oldies now, which is how I didn't start till late 98, and that's what the format was.
Yeah, I was on the air when the format changed. In fact, I was doing evenings on the night of the last night when it was still the rock and roll format. And I just remember they kept coming in. You would stack up your songs. They were on these things called carts. We'll show a cart sometime because people have no idea.
Basically, it's an 8-track tape. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it's basically an 8-track tape. It's one track.
It's not 8 tracks. It's just one thing, like one commercial, one song.
One song. Yep. So I had those. We had a few CDs. So you'd stack up your songs in order, right? So you just take from the top, play it, and then turn it upside down and turn it over and put it at the bottom. Well, the same night, I'm getting this. I'm doing this air shift from like 7 to midnight on a Sunday night. They are getting ready to launch the oldies the next morning. And so 2 people were in and they were getting the new songs put on the carts. Well, they ran out of carts. And so they kept coming in and taking my music from me. Because like, oh, you got a 4.5 minute cart? Oh, I'll take that song. I'll go erase it and I'll go put, something by the Monkees on it or whatever. And so then that next morning they lit up the oldies format. So we went from rock to oldies in that Sunday night into Monday morning.
So what was your best memory of working at the same time period at the same radio station? Like I was there between like 98 to, well, when did I quit? No, I'm sorry, 89.
89 to 90.
Different radio stations. All of us DJs have worked at so many stations. Yeah, it was 88 to 92.
Yeah. And I was working part-time in 87 and then I left in 92. So
about the same time. So what was your favorite memory? I mean, I've got mine. What were yours?
Oh my gosh. Probably my favorite memories were doing evenings. And at the time,
it started at 7. Yep.
Started 7 to midnight.
Which was when I was done. So I'd always introduce you.
Yep. And Gary will remember well. I went through a phase of my life where I smoked. And of course, we couldn't smoke in the studio because it was bad for the equipment. And so, in fact, we couldn't really smoke anywhere in the building. But I had my own little setup out in the garage. There was a garage attached to the radio station. And I had an ashtray out there and my smokes and a lighter and a radio. And so I would, hit the song, Oldies 100.7 FM, KKRQ, here come the Rascals, jet down the hallway, get my 2 or 3 puffs in because the songs were only 2 and 2.5 minutes long. And it took a good 8 to 10 minutes to smoke a cigarette. So it'd take me 3 songs to get through 1 cigarette. And although my health was probably declining because of the damn smoking, I was getting a lot of steps in back then. Let's put it that way. A lot of sprints. Probably my most vivid memory is, and this again was in the oldies days, working evenings. I might have been overnights. I don't remember for sure, but we had what, as you well remember in the day, bathroom songs.
Yes.
Because if you needed to do a, shall we say, politely longer bathroom session, you needed more than 3 minutes. You needed like 4, 5, 6 minutes. So when those songs came up in the rotation, you said, okay, here's my opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
My one and only chance.
Your stomach would start going, okay, I think I'm getting ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what song it was, but it was on a CD. Okay. And I hit it, started it, started the stopwatch. I had my watch I had carried at the time had a stopwatch on it. So I started the stopwatch and went into the bathroom. Well, the bathroom was kind of down the hall past the main lobby a little bit. And,
close.
yeah, you couldn't really hear very well the radio, the monitors in the hallway, but you got that trusty timer note, so you know everything's fine. So I'm done well before the time is running out. And I open that bathroom door and round the corner, and all I hear is
Skip CD.
The CD was skipping, and it had been doing. And then I noticed suddenly, oh, the phones are ringing, and I think it was Saul or somebody, one of our friends from our radio community, was the first one I talked to. He said, "Dude, you know that CD's been skipping for like a minute and a half." I said, "Yeah, I was in the bathroom." You're like, "Oh, yeah, that song. I can understand why you're in the bathroom." So I didn't get in trouble for it, but
what's so weird, I used to talk about this even my second career in radio when the computer was around and replaced all what we're talking about. What's weird about our brains with that, which is interesting, you know, not probably interesting to other people, but we've memorized, at least I have, and I know you have, because you get more of a memory like that than I do, of how long these songs are. And even sometimes part numbers. It's sick. Like, I don't know if it was was it our Vietnam or something? Like, it was part of our brain that's just.
Well, I think it was because it was repetitive motion. You think about that oldies format. It was such a tightly formatted radio station. I mean, they're all probably that way now, but you know, we had songs that would come up every 2 hours. And so in a given week, you've probably played a given song maybe 3 or 4 times or more. And so you just get to learn that, okay, that's, that's cart number, whatever, or that's this CD. Yeah. It's almost like muscle memory. You don't even need to go look for it. You just go reach
my
over.
Theory is, Curtis, is that because you get to touch it and it's not just on the screen.
Yeah.
That you have kind of like an album cover, you know, you just have more of a relationship with something that you can actually touch and it's 3D and it's real. And I remember American Pie, Don McLean, 8 minutes and 28 seconds.
Yep.
Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, 7 minutes and 21 seconds. It's sick because these are the longest songs in the format, because it's like what Curtis said. All of the songs in the 60s were 2.5 minutes long. Almost all of them. 3 minutes was too long for I don't know what the deal was back then. I thought everybody had a longer attention span back then.
It was 2.5 was the standard for the first part of the 60s. Then 3 became acceptable in the second part of the 60s and early 70s. And then it was all bets were off at some point, as artists were given a little more leeway, or a little more, leash to hang themselves on, I guess. And then you had those shorties like 158.
Yeah. So then it was time for you to go and leave KKRQ. And what happened?
I was the operations manager for the AM station KXIC at the time. I moved over from KKRQ because they had a full-time opening. It was a little more money. It was day hours, all good things. And my duties were essentially to keep the radio station on all afternoon. I would do every half hour, like a 3 to 5 minute newscast, news reading, play the commercials, And Friday afternoon, it was Friday. It was the first Friday in April of 1992. And our general manager comes in the door. And to preface this, to say it was really quiet around the station that day. I just remember, we were usually palling around in the lobby, or, I'd, in between things I had to do, I'd come in and talk to Gary in the studio, or he'd come in and talk. That day, everybody was just kind of busy. It seemed like they're pretty much to themselves. And then about 5:35, Mr. Winky came into the station, into the studio. The AM studio is way in the back, almost into the garage, and said that they were making some changes, and that my position was being eliminated. And I'm like, oh, first thought, okay, so I'll give you, I'm 2 weeks. I'm thinking I'll give you 2 weeks. He goes,
yeah,
no, you're done as of 6 o'clock tonight.
Wow. The brutality of radio.
Yeah. So I blew off the last newscast of the day, got the automation started at 6, and walked out the door, and never went back. Well, I went back.
And what's crazy about that is this Mr. Winky that Curtis just said, he actually let me go at WMT later. He was the general manager because they combined in later years. This is in the 2000s, and then I went back when he was no longer around and actually worked 2 times at WMT. But it was interesting.
That's the subject of our next podcast.
Different station.
The next podcast to be I was fired by Steve Winkie. But
so now you're to Spencer, Iowa.
Yeah, a lot of people when they lose a job, it's a long funky situation, and I played sad bastard for the weekend, and then started looking for jobs that following Monday. Immediately had 2 interviews on the phone. One job, I had the phone interview on a Tuesday. They offered me the job on a Wednesday, but I had this other job interview on Thursday that I had to drive up to. So in other words, the one was going to hire me based on my tape and a phone interview. And that was at, I can't remember the name of the town. It's in Iowa, Twin Lakes. Then, but
KTLB.
Yeah.
Keep Twin Lakes beautiful. I interviewed there too and did not take the job. When I was 20 years old, I said, I'm going to stay and get a degree, which I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I later worked with the lady, the other radio station. When I got to Spencer, she ended up taking that job. But so I interviewed there. They're like, the job's yours. And I said, well, I have one other opportunity I want to explore. And I went to Spencer, Iowa on a Thursday, did an interview to be news director. They called me on, or actually I went up on Wednesday. They called me back on Thursday, offered me the job. So I was unemployed really 4 days, and I started the next Monday.
Awesome. So it was, I think you really grew a lot. It seemed like you got, you were a big deal in a smaller town. Radio was so important, more so.
Yeah.
At
Spencer. You really felt more value.
Yeah, because there's no TV, so there was a lot of news that was very important.
Yeah, I was news director, reporter, everything from boring police reports to, shootings to anything that happened really in a 9-county area. And I think, and I later ran into Mr. Winkie at the Iowa State Fair, and I went up to him and I shook his hand and I thanked him. I said, you getting me out of KKRQ KXIC was the best thing that ever happened, because I really was not, I was going through the motions, man, because I didn't feel like there was any value to what I was doing, Right. When I got to KXIC and or KICD in Spencer, I felt like there's some value to what I'm doing here. People are relying on us for news and weather and sports and all those things. So it was a completely different feel. And yeah, I grew up a lot.
What were the hours like? Were they crazy?
Dumb. Yeah. So I would have to be work around 5 a.m. and my first small newscast was at 5:30. And then the first big newscast was at 6. So I had 10-minute newscasts at 6, 7, and 8. And then a big 20-minute newscast at noon every day, Monday through Saturday. And as we talked about previously, you had to work 6 days a week, almost every radio opportunity you're in back then. So yeah, I was usually be work at 5. I'd usually get home around 1:30 or 2, depending on what was going on, because a lot of times I had to go home, and then that night I'd have to go to a city council meeting or a school board meeting or something like that. So if I knew I was going to be out 3 hours in the evening, then I might leave right after the noon news so I could get a nap in, which was absolutely vital because I never got used to those early morning hours. I made it work, but I never got used to it.
I never did either, doing morning radio. By the time Friday would hit, I was so sleep deprived. I'd have 2 mornings. I'd have 2 hour, 3 hour naps, which was just ridiculous. Yeah. It's so hard on your body. And I don't understand. My wife's mother worked overnights for years, and I don't know how people do it. Just everybody's built differently.
The worst part for me, Gary, was that first year. I got to Spencer in 1992, so April 1992. Well, you and I and others in our little circle at that time were also doing mobile DJ work for weddings. And I had booked a bunch of weddings back in the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids area that were already on the books before I moved to Spencer. So I had many Saturdays where I would work 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. at KICD in Spencer, run home, load my gear, drive 3.5 hours to Iowa City to do a wedding, and because I was broke poor, couldn't afford a hotel room, and I was only getting $400 or $500, I'd have to drive all the way back home. So I'd get to work at 5 a.m. and I get home at 3 a.m. And
Oh my
that was
goodness.
just the worst. But I gutted it out that summer. And fortunately I started doing weddings up in the Northwest Iowa region.
Wow. So when you look back at your radio career, do you have any regrets of any kind?
Yes, I do. I wish I had been more energetic and more taken it a little more seriously in the early days. I think I could have been a successful radio personality beyond, I mean, successful. Yeah, we had great ratings with that oldies station, but I think you could have put, a trained rabbit on the air and we could have done well because that music was so hot at that time. I think I didn't take advantage of the opportunities as well as I should have. And I think just part of it is I was not that mature yet.
Well, none of us, yeah, none of us were. That was actually one of a good thing to be if you're radio is keep that youthful mind.
Yep.
But yeah, I wish I would have been able to pick my own morning partner. I was always it was a forced marriage, if you will, and here's your partner. Get along and make a show out of it. If I could have chosen somebody or they chose me or whatever, that would have been better, I think. But I'll never know. But yeah, what is there anything about the radio career you're like miss or think, wow, I'm so glad that I had the radio career because this knowledge lasted and was valuable.
Actually, everything in radio prepared me for everything that came after radio, and it prepared me very well. It taught me to communicate well, at least I hope so most of the time. It taught me to organize my thoughts before I open my mouth most of the time. My wife will disagree with that. It really prepared me. I went from radio to marketing and public relations, then into consulting, telecommunications consulting, and now I'm running a nonprofit. In every one of those steps, I've been doing a lot of communicating in front of groups or one-on-one. And a lot of what I learned in radio has been applied daily in the things I've done since then. Plus, I still get to play DJ on weekends at weddings. So
yeah, there you go. But I would concur on that. Is it helps us always ask what we're made to do in radio is ask the question, who cares?
Yeah.
And are we perfect at it? Well, of course not. But the point is whether you're posting something on social media or at a social event, you ask yourself, does this person going to care about the topic that I'm about ready to bring up or this story or how to concisely tell a story is a skill. I think that sales, being in sales and just being in a relationship business has helped. Heck, I even just started my little gig at the golf course down the street and being a ranger, which means you're running around and making the speed of play, keep it going. But I found out, you're golfing. These people are golfing, having a good time. They don't have 4 or 5 minutes to talk to you.
No.
So, I'll ask them how are things going. Are you having fun? How are the people in front of you playing? And you'll get into these 1-minute conversations, 2-minute conversations. And I'm like, wow, I know how to do that. It's just kind of fun to be able to relate to people in 2 minutes is my point.
What I'm surprised, you told me that the other day, I had to smile because it's like, that's exactly what I would be doing if I was out there. I'd be making up little conversations. But then I thought about the other thing I'd probably be doing if I was out there, Gary, is I'd be back there on my Granger cart, 30 yards off the fairway going, okay, John's got his approach shot. Now he's coming into the long three.
You're going to have that. I would never be
bring this in on a slight fade so it goes into the wind. Oh, and he hit it into the sand.
Now on Monday when I go there, I'm going to be thinking about you with your little voice, little calm voice talking like that. That's hilarious.
We've got to whisper.
So what else do you want the audience to know about your radio career? Because this is going to be it now. We featured me last time. We featured you. We're going to talk about
ourselves forever.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about other personalities, other things of really, behind the curtain kind of stuff that nobody knows unless you were in the business. Because it is fascinating.
Our personal experiences with some of those behind the curtain things will come out, but But no,
Sure.
I'm lucky that I got out by choice and not by being forced out, because in my second wave of radio career, when I was doing news, I kind of mentioned I maybe was going through the motions a little bit when I was at KKRQ and working with you guys, but I really took advantage of the opportunity I had the second time around. And that led to the opportunity. I was hired for my first marketing and public relations job because the person who hired me said, I really like how you handle yourself on the radio when you're doing interviews, when you're doing a public forum about some important issue. I really like how you handle that. And I'd like you to work for me and handle that stuff for me too. So, I'm a believer that everything in your life is like a Lego, right? And you lay down a row of Legos, and then you build another row on top of it, and you hope it doesn't all fall over at some point, and you can keep building it higher. But it's just another layer and a foundation of my life and your life and everybody else's lives that we know well.
Well, and the relationships I've gotten out of I was only in radio and commercial radio for about a decade in total.
Yep.
And yet I have, in fact, you talked about leaving on your own accord. I did as well, even though I got fired in 2001. And then they asked me back, a new program director, JJ. I'll just call him JJ. He's actually going to be my house guest this weekend.
Nice.
He hired me again
to protect the innocent.
But he hired me again for the second and last time in Cedar Rapids, even though I had a little stint in radio here in Arizona. But he's a lifelong friend now.
That's the key.
Yeah, I went back on my own terms. I actually left. That's kind of an interesting story. I always tell people. It's so surprising that he's still my friend, because he would always email me everything. And he'd walk by the window of the studio and still email me like 3 or 4 sentences. So I thought, when I'm going to quit, I had my 2-week vacation. I came back and quit. And I quit via email. And that didn't go very well. But he's still a friend of mine, and we'll have a good time this weekend together. He's actually still in radio in Southern Arkansas.
Oh, cool.
What do you call it? A bunch of stations.
Well, we look at how freaking young we were when we were doing that. And there's people that are contemporaries that are still doing it. And I don't feel that young anymore. I mean, I feel young, but I'm definitely not young, right?
No, you're more aware. I call it more aware of you've got to live life to the fullest on a daily basis. So nothing wrong with that. Well, I appreciate the time again, Curtis. We'll see you again soon. We'll put another one on, and I don't know what we're going to do next time, but I'm sure it'll be something fun about someone in the business. We'll feature somebody, and
something, someplace, sometime.
Absolutely. Have a great one. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
See you all next time, everybody.
We'll see you.